the competitions and administrative coordination will cost us $600. It will cost a total of $10,550,000. Other funds in US, so it will cost Catholic from BIARI. We are planning more ambitious that will be react because we have our partner from Timor-Leste. Somebody will explain something on this. Taking over the time. So the other funds from other sources, and we have a total of $1,550. Okay, thank you.
Okay, just to recap, what we're trying to do is we're applying for a venture fund for the venture, and what we're trying to do is basically convert the young people, especially the millennials, into becoming advocates for farming and gardening. Who's the youngest person here? Okay, I'd like to pretend as well, but Marco? Hi, Marco. Have you tried growing your own food, Marco? No. Who here has tried growing their own food?
Sorry, we're gonna cut it down and yes, but you see that there's time already. Yes, so we're gonna go now to the panel for the panel for their questions.
So I guess one of my first questions is, really how this specifically relates to disaster risk reduction and how the idea that you have is going to solve the underlying problems. The underlying problem that you bring up is food insecurity. How is this going to solve the issue of food insecurity, especially as it relates to natural disasters?
Thank you so much for the question.
Yes, we are specifically tackling food insecurity because food insecurity in the Philippines and a lot of poor Asian countries is a disaster. It's an everyday disaster. I feel so stressed now. We are involving the youth in this project, in this campaign, because we want to address their diminishing interest in the areas of agriculture and being resilient in themselves and growing their own food. We therefore think that if we mobilize the energy of the youth through the use of popular platforms such as Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, we'll be able to reach more audience and create at least an increasing trend in the interest in agriculture. It's going to address the food security of the country.
Philippines have recent experiences with climate change, and where climatic conditions have greatly affected the harvests and produce and of the farmers. And this gave way to a lot of problems, including urban areas where food became extremely expensive, or there's a lack of food supply. So what we're trying to do is encourage the young people to look at growing their own food, whether it's urban gardening or rural farming or rural area, to start looking at growing their own food. So we hope that through this, through the campaign, the competition, the children, the young people would look at it from their perspective and be the ones to be ambassadors of urban gardening and growing their own food.
Again, congratulations to Group 6. Thank you for that presentation. You're definitely addressing a very large problem. Just to reinforce what Adam said, suggestions as you refine this, maybe I have 3 suggestions. One is if you can narrow this down so that it's very specific about food security as it relates to disaster, rather than a general increasing demand. I'm sure there's ways to do that. And maybe that would also help you address the budgetary issue. I think, again, if you have such a large budget, you will need to raise other funds beyond BIARI. So ideally, you want to be able to do something just with the BIARI seed funding. And then the third is just to reiterate one of the main criteria, which is sustainability. So I wasn't really sure, maybe I missed it, where the revenue would come from so that it can grow on its own payback.
Can you bring up the logical framework, please? I would not want to sound like Simon Cowell here. But your log frame has a disconnect in what you presented. Because if you are about zero hunger, which is SDG 2, that zero hunger should be what is stated in that goal statement. Because that goal statement of yours is really more like an output or an outcome. So this log frame has to be revised.
Thank you so much. We really value the inputs and the comments. Just for the sustainability portion, when the facilitators were asking us about sustainability, we all had this question of, because we all came from diverse backgrounds and very diverse interests. So it took us, the process was more fun and insightful for us than the whole output. But what took us, when we were asked about sustainability, the questions were, so what do we sustain? Do we sustain the competition? Because this is two stages. We have a one-year competition that would lead to demo farming of the winners themselves to continue them as being ambassadors. So we were asking, so do we sustain the competition? Do we sustain the winners as being advocates? Or do we sustain the whole information campaign program? So what we've initially discussed as part of the sustainability, and we would love inputs about it as well, is that the sustainability of the IDC campaign would come from, it's a 2-year cycle, 1 year competition and the other year of them growing their own food, learning about it from demo farms and mentors, and blogging about it. And then the second part of sustainability is how do you sustain the whole 2-year cycle, and that's what we're trying to figure out, but we're really looking for different venues of marketing and partnership and sponsorship for this.
All right, thank you.
Group 7. Number 7.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Byron from Group 7. Our research proposal is about alternative livelihood program for the relocated coastal communities of Barangay Labuan and Wangas. Okay. The problem we're trying to do, the specific problem is there are already projects on relocating these families, but as to the social preparation, because they would return to their place of origin. Okay, so particularly this area, these are living in the stilt houses. So we have Tausug and Bajau. They are increasingly marginalized and vulnerable. Okay, and the fisheries are the coastal communities. These areas will be one of the worst poverty incidents. 2015 of 34% poverty incidence for fisher folks. Okay. So the primary objective is to provide appropriate livelihood program for relocated communities, to remove them from the hazard of natural hazard. You have storm surges, flooding, okay? And then as a guideline, the process and principles in consideration for the identification, selection, and development of alternative income generating activities appropriate for the relocated coastal communities. So the significance, the impact of this would be the alternative livelihood program for them would be so that they are less exposed to these storm surges, tsunami, and other sea level connected with, of course, climate change. So here we have a map. So of course, the pilot area would be in Zamboanga City, there in the peninsula. So we would conduct focus group discussion in key format. What are the available opportunities? Because as we look into the livelihood, based on the sustainable livelihood framework, we have, it's not just basically an economic attribute. So we're not just looking in the income or assets. No, we look into the human capital, natural capital, financial, what are the existing social, okay, and in the area. Okay, so for the school, we have 16 formal settlers housed in the Barangay Labuan in Zamboanga City, and the data collection will be semi-structured. Okay, and the assessment would be after the conduct of this, it will be disseminated with like a stakeholders forum with the LGU and the other stakeholders in the area. Okay, because we will have NGOs there, and then a strong partnership also with the LGU of Zamboanga City. Okay, so the timeline will be 1.5 years. Okay, to conduct the market research, the scoping, the FGD, the informant, the key, and then the training, and then relocation, assessment, evaluation, and then information dissemination. Okay, we will have published the study. So these are the particular. Okay, so this over the seed fund, but we will have a partnership again, a strong partnership with the LG through the municipal, okay, DRR. Okay? So this is not a longitudinal study, so it's not overtime. It's just a one-off. Alright? Thank you.
Okay, I will start. So I was asking Arvin if this is a mixed method research or not. I think it would be very important to write that in your proposal. You mentioned that you're going to be doing some semi-structured interviews at the same time some survey. So is it going to be a mixed sequential method? Are you implementing that simultaneously?
Yes, it will be a mix, quantitative and qualitative.
But is it simultaneously, or
Yes.
one is codependent?
Yes, it will be simultaneous.
Okay. I think that will be very important to put that in the proposal so that when we read when your proposals are going to be speaking, the method, the process of analysis are also very important. Thanks.
Kind of familiar with this area. The survey of the settlers to find out their skills.
Yes.
Then you can find jobs.
Yes. Opportunities for them.
They've already been there a few years. These settlement areas.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the problem you address is a very real problem. You know, it's a real pain point here, which is how do relocated communities find livelihood in their new sites so that they don't go back to their old sites. It's a big challenge, and I think this is something that is really worth pursuing. However, my comment, and I guess my suggestion, not only for this group but for the other groups, is that I notice the tendency is to have kind of a bit of a stretched out timetable, that runs a year and a half, 2 years. But the reality is, for these people, is they don't have that kind of luxury of time. So that the studies have to be done in a much more focused fashion. Because we need to address a need today, not a year and a half from now. Because a year and a half from now, it's a whole different set of problems. They might be moving on, be even forced to move on to a new location or relocate back to where you want to keep them away from. So I think time, you have to be conscious of how quickly you can get the studies done.
Yeah, I guess my question would be the generalizability of the study results. So are you going to conduct this study and then have a good sense of what the alternative livelihood possibilities might be for this one community in the Philippines? I mean, even getting the journal to publish it, that's going to be difficult, but even if you do, is that going to affect the community next door or another community elsewhere in the Philippines or another community in Southeast Asia? And so I think what we'd like to see is research that could potentially have greater generalizability, and it'd be important to talk about that in your proposal.
Maybe I'll just add to that what I'm saying is that I guess for many of these projects, scale is important. You have to think like giving one case, but, you know, that's one barangay. We've got 40,000 barangays in the country, and at any given time, some percentage of them will have the same issue, the same problem. So how can we scale? Is there something about this methodology that allows us to rapidly plan and implement projects across a wider number of barangays?
So just as an example, if you're using this pilot study to develop a tool that you're then going to be able to use in a larger study across multiple different settings, that might be, I think, something that you can explain in your proposal that would make us think, oh, once they do this, they're going to be able to do the research on a much larger scale rapidly.
One more.
One more.
I just want to follow through on what you recommended. There has been indeed some work on generalizability of livelihood packages. And it dates back to the 1970s, late 70s, during the time of the Minister of Human Settlements. Because when the BLISS program was being developed at that time, the BLISS program actually started in the countrysides, not in Metro Manila. And one of the elements of it was that each community will have its own livelihood program. And so one of the things that the ministry had to do was to create several alternative livelihood packages that can be customized to communities. So there's that possibility that that could actually be done.
Yes, we'll take it on. Yes, great. Thank you to group number 7. Finally, our last group number 8. We're right on there.
Good morning. Can we have this slide, please? Thank you for. I've been tasked by the group to present our output. Yes, ma'am. Okay. We begin with the challenges that we are where we are taking off. Next slide. Sorry, ma'am. Okay, we are taking off from the observation that fragmented efforts for DRRM do not embed systematic awareness and strategies for community disaster resilience. This is augmented by observations in at least 3 areas. One is on the DRRM programs. On the national level, you have various programs being implemented by the government, but most of these are focusing on political entities. Basically, the provinces, the municipalities, barangay officials at the lowest level. Private initiatives are sectoral, some are industry-centered. Unfortunately, most of them are pilot. That means selected sites. And most of them would have very limited resources for national upscaling. In the community level, we are also citing the experiences on short memory. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months after the disaster, we forget about it because we take it as moving on. Unfortunately, in other countries, that's rarely done. You see, even Hiroshima would have its museum reminding people about what happened during those times. Then the stories are most focused on sensational ones. Then the initiatives are sporadic and divergent. Then this situation, one of the biggest factors would be the education sector. Particularly if you want to address the awareness level and the knowledge level of our citizens when it comes to disaster resilience. We have existing programs by the CHED and the DepEd. Unfortunately, these programs would provide us with guides, curriculum programs, but some teachers would yearn for more instructional materials, for more area-specific or community-specific materials to make their teaching more effective. So it is in that context that we are taking off with this project
Decoding Disasters for Development, a multi-sectoral rights shop towards the creation of International Learning Network for Disaster Resilience, or we call that I-Learn Disaster Resilience. Okay, it's basically an attempt to decode disasters for development. We are saying that most of the time, the academy would be talking with the communities, unfortunately to the neglect of the local government units. There are times also that the LGU is directly linked with the communities with very serious limitations on articulation of theories and concepts. So it is in this context that we are looking at the project intervention or of this venture. This is where iLearn would come in. We will become a platform for convergence of these three basic and important players in the local communities. We are proposing a venture with three major components. One is the workshop component, or a national multi-sectoral rights shop, to be followed by the production of instructional materials for K-12, for communities, and even for NSTP classes. Then we will beef that up with institutionalization. We have to sustain this. It doesn't have to be a one-time, one-round project. And we will optimize that at the end of the day when we have set it up with the production of the instructional materials and the utilization of other media, including your online platform. Okay, just a very quick detail on the specific phases of the project, of the venture. The production, and then the institutionalization, and then the optimization. Okay? We are looking at this as a venture, so it has to be feasible. We have target market, we have the value proposition, and we have the resources to be generated, including the expected revenue stream, and then the channels that we will be using. The market would principally be the education sector, both the higher educational institutions and the K-12 institutions. Then we will work closely with DepEd, and then we have an organization of DRRM officials nationwide. We will tap into their network, but at the same time, we have just also created the National Resilience Council, which we hope also to partner with, so that this can be brought into the grassroots level. Right now, the NRC is working with 8 sites, 7 cities and towns, and 1 province. I think 4 of them are represented here. Okay? So we have potential partners. In fact, we have cited here Holy Angel, Ayala Group, and then the UST. From the very start, when we do the workshop, we would like them to be on board because we would like them to decipher also their needs, particularly on instructional materials, as we dialogue with communities and responders. We have set our online platform. Please add us in your account. We are now a joint venture. Thank you.
This is advanced. All right,
Well, I'm really impressed. I mean, you guys have really thought through a lot of things and thinking very many steps ahead. So I think that this is one, that you could organize into a venture. Again, I go back to my original advice is that when you work in consortia, as I think you are looking at here with a number of schools and institutions, I think it's very clear to think, how are you going to set this up in terms of, is it a fully private enterprise, private corporation? Is it something that you're looking for the government to join? And if the government is going to join, then if there's such a structure that allows government and private sector to co-invest in a venture. And if you have a government co-invest in a venture and that venture gets revenues, where do the revenues go? Because I know if you guys in government, you need to get it reappropriated back to you, or get the venture capital fund. So details like that, but I think the idea is a good one. It gets back down to organizational structure. That's going to be a challenge. But once you solve that challenge, I think potentially we've got a reasonably good chance of success in the business.
Thank you.
Congratulations again to Group 8. You're certainly thinking bold and big. I guess maybe it's a little bit the opposite of some of the other feedback where we were trying to get people to go big. Maybe here, you may want to consider being a bit more targeted. For example, when you say better content in general, it becomes so big. And if you make it international, it becomes so diverse. So just a consideration. I mean, if you just started with content for senior high school to supplement what the DepEd teachers have, that's already huge. So maybe think about it a step at a time. The second is Bill's point. It wasn't clear to me, maybe you just didn't have enough time, what the business model is. So if you're a portal and then content providers go on, I guess they find each other, but I'm not sure how the portal becomes sustainable. So maybe just make that clearer. Also the incentives for all the participants. If I'm a content provider, why would I go on this portal, and how do I as the content provider monetize that? Right? So it's a great concept, it's a great need. Congratulations, you have your Facebook page already. But it would be great if you can provide more clarity on those.